What's going on? This is your man John Fortune, your host of the Frustrated Fan Sports Show, and today, y'all know what I'm focusing on. Wednesday is Washington Commanders training camp, and there are 10 questions that I need answered as we go into the season for me to be convinced that this is a double-digit win team, because you have to understand something. Even though we have a favorable schedule, if none of these questions are answered or have really good answers or just subpar answers to what is going to go on in this season, even though the schedule is favorable, we might have a losing season. But I'm hoping that we don't, because again, unlike what Philadelphia did, I don't think that we made a lot of moves that could help us. But at the same time, if they get some of these answers, if they get some of these questions answered, they'll definitely do a fantastic job in the season. So I'm going to start off with my number one question, and this is the question that probably should be number one on everybody's list. What is Carson Wentz's understanding of the offense? Carson Wentz has been in the same offense for the past entirety of his career. He was with Andy Reid for a short minute, then was with Doug Peterson for a very long time, and then from Doug Peterson went to Frank Reich, who was, again, all under the same umbrella of Andy Reid, and he ran pretty much that same offense. Frank Reich adjusted it a little bit in Indianapolis when Carson Wentz started to make the mistakes that they didn't need, and they went to a run-heavy offense. But again, we're talking about Carson Wentz transitioning from an offense he was so comfortable with to now an offense he's not really understanding much of. Not only that, we're talking about there was a point where even Scott Turner made a point of saying that Carson Wentz, we let him see the playbook and asked him what plays did he feel comfortable with. So that tells me that even though everybody is excited about this whole thing about, oh, the playbook is going to be wide open. How wide open is the playbook really? I mean, the playbook might actually be limited because of the fact that Carson Wentz is learning a new offense. So again, question number one, Carson Wentz's understanding of the offense. Question number two, the chemistry of this new offensive line. Now, Samuel Cosmi comes back and he's playing on the right side. We got Charles Leno on the left side. We got Chase Roullier, who I think isn't going to really be back in time for the start of training camp because he had a very significant injury. And you're talking about beside the center will be Trey Turner and Norwood. So we now have to find out how cohesive this offensive line is really going to be this upcoming season, because again, if Carson Wentz is supposed to have success or going to have success, he's going to have to be behind a offensive line that's going to be able to really protect them in this upcoming season. And for me, I'm a little concerned about that. I mean, you can't just adjust people, even though they were a part of the team before and been in Scott Turner's style of offense. But even with that being said, who knows what can actually come from this. And again, we have to see what the chemistry of the offensive line is this upcoming into training camp and going into the preseason. Next, number three is, to me, this one is a really big one. And that for me is Scott Turner's personnel awareness. What that means is that we seen last year how, for some strange reason, Cam Sims never got into the game enough, especially once Curtis Samuel was out and a lot of other players was dropping down. And then when Cam Sims would get in there, all of a sudden Cam Sims would make an impact. And for some reason, Scott Turner had no understanding of what was going on. Even when it came to Antonio Gibson, to not have Antonio Gibson go out there and catch more passes and everything like that, that to me is a failure in understanding personnel and understanding your personnel and drawing up plays for all your personnel as well. So for me, that is going to be a huge thing this upcoming season. Is Scott Turner going to utilize his personnel to its fullest potential, or is he going to squander it again? Because like I said, so many times we've seen Cam Sims play a role and make big plays, but yet and still, next thing you know, we don't see him for a while. The same thing applies to Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel. How do you implement these guys? How do you make these guys good? How do you make them be a very great complement to Terry McLaurin? These are things that we have to know. Again, it's going to come down to Scott Turner understanding his personnel and understanding what plays work well with personnel as well. So we'll definitely see what happens. But for me, that's number 3. Number 4 is rookie development. We got to see what these rookies do this year. If any of them can make a huge impact this year, I personally feel that there is that a couple of them can. I do like Brian Robinson. I think he's going to make an impact. And for Darian Mathis, I know a lot of y'all didn't like him. I don't understand why. I mean, this guy's a 5 technique defensive tackle and probably one of the best young defensive linemen that's going to come into this league. I mean, if you watched him play, he's a devastator. And like I said again, Brian Robinson, I think that Brian Robinson is going to be fantastic. And we have to see what happens with the rest of these rookies. And again, if Brian Robinson is anywhere near a substantial piece to this whole thing, it's going to be something for Antonio Gibson. And that leads me into my next one, which is number 5, and that's Antonio Gibson's wake-up call. Now, again, a lot of people like Antonio Gibson. I like Antonio Gibson. But I told y'all at the end of the season last year, I told y'all he regressed. He regressed in a major way. And for some of y'all may not have seen that, but he absolutely regressed, which is why the staff was okay with drafting a running back in the 3rd round. And why they went with the particular running back that they did, because he didn't fumble as much and he was already a pure running back. So again, did Antonio Gibson understand what just happened? You know, does Antonio Gibson understand the benefit of looking at film? Remember, I talked about that and how he made the comment that he doesn't look at any running back film. And if any indication is what it should be, Antonio Gibson, if he actually went out and actually looked at film of other players, he will be better this upcoming season. But if he's not, Brian Robinson will take his job. So did Antonio Gibson get the wake-up call? We have to find out. Next is the sophomores. We have to find out what these second-year players do. Samuel Cosmi, he went down to injury, but again, he was doing very well during this time, and while he was playing, he played very well. He looked like a guy that was basically almost like he wasn't even a rookie, which was fantastic. And that was something that I thought was very impactful when it came down to what was going on. Next, Benjamin St. Juste, again, another guy who had a huge impact prior to his injury. Now, another thing with him is that we have to monitor the concussions to make sure that there isn't a chance that this concussion thing can be a long-term problem, and that, you know, he goes through the Jordan Reed situation where he's out all the time. So we'll definitely see about that. And of course, when it comes down to it, we have to pay attention to Jamin Davis. What is Jamin Davis 2.0? Is it Jamin Davis Davis this stellar linebacker, or is it Jamin Davis still trying to figure things out? You know, we're going to have to find out what Jamin Davis actually is, and if he's actually learning anything, especially when it comes to his second year. Not only that, you're also talking about Dearmi Brown. We got to talk about him. What is his progress? What's happening with him? Is he going to step up come next year? Because he actually has some serious competition this upcoming season. I mean, it's going to be difficult for him to get on the field if Curtis Samuel's healthy all year and Jahan Dotson is flourishing, and then all of a sudden you got Terry McLaurin. It's going to be difficult for Dearmi Brown to get on the field. So we'll definitely have to see that. But again, the focus is on what is going to happen with these sophomores. And with that being said, the next thing after that is the linebacking core. This linebacking core is going to have to prove to us that they can play. Now, I will say this. If by chance all the conversations that's happening about the possibility of Anthony Barr joining the Commanders, I will say this. If Anthony Barr joins us, then we actually will have a possible solid 3 linebacking core. But again, that's all on the basis of Anthony Barr. We still have to find out if Cole can actually play the middle. He has played the middle back at North Carolina, but he hasn't played it in the NFL as much. And we have to see if he actually does transition into it. And again, I just talked about Jamin Davis in the sophomore line, but again, he's another one. If he doesn't step up, what do we do after that? They got an undrafted free agent who I thought was a very good pickup that everybody's talking about, but we have to see what he is in training camp. We have to see if he is actually reliable when it comes to that. And if Cole Holcomb happens to fail in the middle, can he step in and actually become a guy that can be a starter and basically put the linebacking core back on track and in order? And so at that point, we can actually see a very functioning linebacking core instead of the disastrous linebacking core we've seen the past several seasons under Russ, I can't think his name right now, but the linebacking coach. So yeah, number 7 is the linebacking core. Number 8 is the Buffalo nickel. This is a part of why I hope they can sign Anthony Barr. I have to admit, the Buffalo nickel to me is a position that is it's one of those positions that you can. It's a gimmicky position. That's my best way of explaining it. It's a gimmicky position that is utilized to stop the run. I'm hoping they're able to sign Anthony Barr so we can then have 3 linebackers actually playing instead of having this positionless player playing this particular position. And even with that, we're not even sure who will be playing that. I mean, are they going to re-sign Landon Collins for him to come back and play the position? Will it be a situation where they go and sign or they use Percy Butler to fill the role? Is it going to be Derek Forrest? Is it going to be Benjamin St. Juste? I mean, the crazy thing about that is that they want to use St. Juste, or there's been talks of St. Juste playing that role, but he just had the concussion, and we don't want him to have this reoccurring thing, especially when he's a really good cornerback. So, like I said again, the Buffalo nickel position, again, it all tethers on who they're going to have play this position. We're not really certain how it's going to look with the new player in it, or if Landon Collins come back, we'll kind of have an idea what it's going to be. But if he doesn't come back, we're going to have to figure it out. And like I said, it won't be a key thing in our defense if they're able to sign Anthony Barr back. So if they're able to sign Anthony Barr. So that will be a huge thing. Next, at number 9 is the defensive line rebound. What we saw in 2019, in comparison to what we saw the last year was nothing like what we were expecting. This defensive line regressed so badly that we weren't even sure what was going to happen with this defensive line, especially when you talk about all our number 1 picks. Now you're talking about the loss of Matt Ioannidis, the loss of Tim Settle, and Phidarian Mathis, who I think is going to be a very good defensive lineman for us. But we have to see if they rebound from the poor season last year. Even though Chase Young and Montez Sweat did have injuries and everything like that, we still have to see what this defensive line becomes. Does Deron Payne have a massive season due to the fact that he knows he's going to be a free agent? Will Phidarian Mathis have the impact that he needs to have? Is Jonathan Allen going to have the same season that he had the year before? These are questions we're going to have to find out. Will our ends be the devastators that we expected them to be last year? These are all questions that we have, that all of us are going to have. And when it comes down to it, we're going to have to find out, will this defensive line rebound? Hopefully they will. Hopefully this defensive line can rebound enough to actually make a huge impact. Not only that, to basically keep a lot of the offensive linemen and offensive players off the linebacking core, especially if the linebacking core isn't that solid this upcoming season. But again, like I said, we have to hope and pray that this defensive line's rebound is a very big impact on us this upcoming season. And last but not least, on my list of the top 10 questions that we need answered with training camp starting and with the preseason on its way, we have to find out, is Jack Del Rio finally focused on the defense? With Jack Del Rio getting fined that $100,000, did this impact him enough to make him now adjust his focus on the defense? Will this get him away from the mindset of all the energy that he put into the political realm, and he now has put it into actually calling really good defensive calls? We saw that Jack Del Rio, he doesn't blitz. Like we saw at the beginning of the season, they went with a 5-man front, and that just did not work at all. Jack refused to blitz. Jack refused to actually adjust or make in-game adjustments and everything like that. We saw Jack Del Rio, who was so busy in the political realm and cares so much about tweeting his political views and tweeting all this political stuff, but yet and still our defense was not solid. It was not strong. And hopefully with this fine and him being kind of forced to be off of Twitter, even though I think he's probably still on Twitter just under a different name, but with all this happening, will his focus be on actually making sure that this defense is one of the top defenses in the league come next year? Because again, I was one of the people, I felt that Jack should have been fired last year, because I just feel that at the end of the day, he doesn't do enough to actually get his players ready or get the team ready or the defense ready to actually play quality football games. And again, like I said, some people like Jack. Like I said, he runs an old scheme. That's another thing. Hopefully he's caught on to the fact that he can't run this old scheme anymore. That people have become aware of what scheme he's running, and they're going to try their best to beat it based on how people in the past have beaten it. So again, hopefully Jack is now focused on the defense and focused on making sure that this defense becomes one of the top 10 defenses in the league this upcoming season. Again, the schedule is favorable for this to happen. And if Jack isn't on his game, then guess what? This team is not going to be any good. So those are my top 10 questions that need to be answered in this training camp into the preseason to get me to actually believe that this team is going to be a 10-win team or a double-digit win team. Because again, I'm on the fence right now because there are things that we need to do or that hasn't been done or that hasn't been clarified enough for me to believe that we can actually win 10 games. So again, like I said, once these questions are answered, we'll definitely find out what direction Washington is going to go, if they're going to make the playoffs, if they're going to be a contender, if they set up there and face a weaker schedule and still only win 7 games. We'll definitely find that out. Y'all tell me what y'all think. Y'all tell me if any of these questions are questions you need answered or if you have different questions that need to be answered. Other than that, this has been your man, John Fortune, and this has been the Frustrated Fan Sports Show.